And we are live. G'day everyone, Mike Jeffrey here, and you're listening to a very special, very short episode of my creative journey. Episode number 56. Well, it's no surprise that I haven't been around here in the past couple of weeks. Actually, I haven't released an episode in about 4 weeks, which is the longest period of time between episodes since I started this podcast at the start of 2021, way back in January last year. And there's a good reason for that. And the probably answer to that is in the title of this episode. You probably already know the answer, and that is that I got a new job. And no, it's not just a photography job. It's not a creative job in any way, shape, or form. I got a job working at a cafe here in town. And I wanted to make a whole episode talking about my new job and talking about the experiences I've had with that over the past couple of weeks and where we're headed to with all the things in my life and around my whole creative journey. So let's jump right into that. And as you guys will have known, I've made an episode, I think earlier in this year, talking about my sort of struggle with financial anxiety. And that had sort of come about through not being very financially free in my own photography business or in my creative business. And that was something that I knew was going to be a struggle early on. And of course, starting any business, it's hard to be able to maintain that cash flow early on, to be able to keep yourself afloat and to be able to pay for things in your business, but then also to be able to pay for things in your own life. I think something that a lot of people overlook, a lot of creative people especially overlook, is that they need to be able to draw a wage for themselves out of the money that they're making in their business. Like, it's great to be covering expenses within your own business, and I've been managing to do that so far, but very few times have I been able to draw money out of my business to pay for my own expenses like rent and be able to buy food and all the other expenses that go with life, you know? So that has been something that I've really struggled with, and I made a whole episode about that. And it's gotten to a point earlier in this year where I really wasn't able to survive, and it's only because of my fiancée Emily that I've been able to really stay afloat in my own life and things like that. So it got to a point where I needed to go and look for another job because I just wasn't able to maintain my own creative work and be able to do that sustainably within my own life and with the expenses that I have within my own life. So I needed to be able to go and get a new job. Now, this may sound like it comes from a very privileged position, and it probably does, because I haven't had to have a job up until now with my creative business. I've gone probably 2 years without having a real job as such, just working in my photography business and been able to sustain that. And I've spoken about that on numerous episodes before and how I've been able to do that. But it's gotten to a point where it's no longer able to continue. And a lot of big expenses coming up. As you guys know, I'm getting married next month as this episode goes live. So a lot of big expenses coming up, and I've just moved, and I've been traveling a lot for work as well, because I've moved up to Port Macquarie at the moment. So I've been traveling back to Sydney quite a lot, and that is a big expense to be moving around a lot all the time with that as well. So it really got to a point where I needed to apply for a new job, and I've been looking around for quite some time, and that whole process was very draining and very demoralizing, really, because I didn't have a lot of experience to go and work in other jobs. You know, it can be hard for a lot of creative people because they don't have a lot of references. They don't have experience in any sort of other roles apart from working for themselves. But I think what they do possess is a lot of skills and a lot of great work ethic. I think a lot of people, anyone who starts their own business, any creative person has a great work ethic, and they do that because they work for themselves all the time, and they know what they've got to get done, and they often work long hours, and they often have a lot of skills in so many different areas. You know, like most creative people out there, and hats off to anyone who's working in a creative industry at the moment, you guys probably have so many creative skills and so many skills in different areas, from finance to admin to marketing to communications to just being able to speak to people. I think so many transferable skills, but it's hard to prove that. It's hard to be able to get a role. It's hard for anyone else to accept that is something you have. And that was a big struggle for me to be able to find a job. You know, it's all well and good to get to a point where you say, well, I need another job to be able to support myself, because I've always been of that opinion that if you really want to make this creative business, if you want to make this creative life something that you're able to do for the rest of your life, if you want to make that creative journey something that you're on for the rest of your life, well, you've got to make that work in whatever ways possible. And we all know that in the early stages of starting any creative business, it's going to be hard, as I said, to be able to keep that cash flow coming in, and be able to keep a steady stream of clients in early on. Like, it's all well and good to have a lot of referrals, but especially in my industry, in the wedding industry, a lot of work is very far in advance, so it's booked out, but you're not really paid. You're only paid on retainer, so it's booked a long way in advance, and you don't get a lot of that money until the actual job date. So until then, you've got to find a way to support yourself in that early stages of your career and in your own business. So if that means going and starting another job, if that means working on the side, if that means working in the evenings, in the mornings, and the weekends, whatever it is, to be able to go and do that. I strongly believe in anyone who's ever done that, and I've heard a lot of great stories from people who've gone and done that for a couple of years and really put themselves in a position where in those 2 years they've worked so hard and gone and been able to support themselves with all the money that they're making in another job to support themselves in a creative business, that then years down the track, they never have to work a single day in their life because the referrals are coming in. They're just able to do something that they really love. And if that is the sacrifice that I have to make, I sort of got to that point and said, well, if that's the sacrifice I have to make because I'm so stressed out at the moment, I'm so stressed out financially at the moment that I'm struggling to be able to pay bills, I'm struggling to pay rent, struggling to even put food on the table, that if that's something that I've got to do to keep this business alive, then that is what it's has to do. You know, if I can earn more money on an hourly rate in another business than I can in my own, because I'm not getting enough client referrals at the moment, I'm not getting enough work through the door, then that's something I've got to do to keep myself alive, to be able to prolong that, to be then able to work more into the future. And I think that has been a really positive thing. But as I said, it's one thing to get to that point where you're thinking that is what you should do, but then being able to find a job and the reality of finding another job can be very difficult. And that was something that was a very training process. Probably not going to go into that too much, but I was really looking everywhere. And it's hard because people were saying, well, there's jobs out there everywhere at the moment. Everyone's crying out for jobs because there's no one from overseas coming in and no one working. There's no skilled workers. But the reality of it was that it was so hard to find a job without any experience whatsoever, even though, you know, I would have so many transferable skills. So that was one big thing. But now, having found a job, you know, the other big thing to that is trying to find that balance between working in my own job and working in another job. It's been great up until the past couple of weeks. I've been working a few days a week, and that's been really nice to sort of offset my other work in the down periods between having shot any weddings. So in those down periods, I'm not really working as much as I probably would after I shoot a wedding. I did just shoot a wedding this last weekend down in Sydney, and so have quite a bit of editing backed up, but then I've also been working every day this week, so I'm rostered on to work 6 days this week. So it can be a bit of a back and forth, and it's that unpredictable thing of working casually. You just don't know what days you're going to work, but trying to work it out and trying to work just a little bit on the side, enough to sustain myself, enough that I can say, well, I'm able to breathe easy now that all my rent and my expenses are taken care of, and anything I earn in my business can be on top of that, and I'm able to then grow my business, because that was a big point that I was getting at, that my business was no longer able to grow because I wasn't able to put any money into it. I can put all the time and effort in the world into it, but if it's not growing and I'm not able to put any money in it to upgrade anything, to be able to offer more services, to be able to advertise to people, if I'm not going to invest in that early on, then it's never going to grow anywhere for me in the future. So I need to have a little bit of money to invest in that. And as I said, if I can earn more money in another business to then be able to put into my business that's going to help my business grow, well, then that's probably the best way to go about that. And so I'm really glad that I made that decision. I think just like myself, there'd be a lot of people out there stuck on whether they should go and get another job on the side of their creative business. It can often seem like a step backwards. And I know for myself, it really felt like a hard thing to do, because it felt like I'd come so far forward and I'm now taking a couple steps back. I'm now, by saying to myself that I need to go get another job, I'm accepting that I'm having to take a couple of steps backwards. And that was hard on the ego to have to take. But I said to myself, really, this is the best thing that I can be doing for my business, because I'm keeping myself alive. I'm making an investment in me and my future by going and spending my time elsewhere to earn me money, to then, first off, not only take stress off me, because being in that state of financial stress was never going to help me in my business to be able to make the best decisions moving forward. But then also, not having the money to invest back into my business is never going to help it grow in the future. So both of those things I had to take into consideration, and I had to take that on the chin, really, and say, well, the ego is going to have to suffer a little bit in order to be able to grow and be able to to be able to maintain myself moving forward. And that was really hard, because everything you hear out there in the world is that everyone wants to go full-time in their creative business. But I think there is a point that you can go full-time too early. And if you're not sustainable, if it's not just a machine that's going to keep turning for you, eventually it's going to slow down. If you haven't got those cogs turning right and you're not able to produce enough referrals, if you're not able to keep putting your prices up all the time to be able to cover your cost of living expenses increasing, if you can't be able to do all those things, if you're working with the same clients all the time and that machine eventually slows down, well, you're going to get to a point where you've gone full time, but then you're going to have to go back and work again somewhere else a few years down the track because you haven't calculated that. And I think that can be viewed as a negative thing, because so many people are being pushed into doing full-time work and full-time creative work even when they're not ready. And I think for me, I just started in this business completely full-time. I didn't have anything else on the side. As I said, we went through a couple of lockdowns with COVID, so I didn't really have anything else at all. So I was spending 100% of my time in my business. And so it wasn't really to me that I really went full-time. That's just how it started. That's how it started for me. I ended university and just decided to go straight into that because I was in a position to be able to do that. You know, it wasn't that I'd really built up the cogs in my business to be able to continue turning by themselves. That was definitely not the case. So now I've had to take a couple of steps back because I started ahead of where I probably was. And I had to accept that. And I think for anyone else out there who's struggling, I think you got to accept that it's okay, you know? It's just like accepting that you need help sometimes. You need help from other people. You need help from other people in the industry. There are people who you can ask if you don't know how to do something. It's all right to go and get this financial help by going and working another job somewhere on the side. That doesn't necessarily have to be a negative thing. One thing that it will do, though, is stop you spending a lot of time in your business. And that's something that I've really struggled with over the past couple of weeks. I haven't been able to put as much time and effort into all the things. And I know I spoke about this on the last episode about trying to cut down some of the things that I was even working on. Some of the more passion projects that I'd been working on the side that weren't producing me an income, I'd been gradually sort of phasing those out because I knew that they weren't sustainable for me. They weren't really moving the needle forward and getting to that point of financial freedom, to that point of having my business on autopilot later on in the future. There are things that I really enjoy, but I have to sacrifice that a little bit in the beginning if it's not helping me grow in my business at the moment. Because as I said, I'm not at a point where I can yet say, oh, I really enjoy this passion project, I'll outsource that and go and do this, because I didn't have the financial means to be able to do that. I had a lot of time that I could spend, but I didn't have the financial means to outsource some parts of my business to go and work on other things that I really enjoyed. And I think that was the real trade-off. So at the moment, it's been a real struggle for me because I have pushed some of those passion projects to the side and really slowed down on a couple things. For example, this podcast, I haven't recorded an episode in a month because I just haven't had a lot of time to be able to do that. And the time that I do have, I have to be prioritizing in things that are super important in my business, answering emails, talking to clients, you know, being able to schedule things like that, scheduling meetings, actually going and taking photos, editing photos, all that type of stuff. So some other things have had to slow down. And that is just a matter of fact. That's just the way it is in life. And hopefully it's not going to be forever. You know, like there are some weeks where I have more time than other weeks, and that is just the way it goes. And I'm still trying to work with that instability all the time there. But that is just something that has had to happen. And so where does this all leave us? I don't know where this podcast is going to be headed to. I've had a month break between the last episode and this one. Not too sure how long it's going to be till the next episode. I'm really thinking about either slowing the regularity of these episodes down, like not producing an episode every week. I just don't think that's going to be sustainable for me anymore. As you guys know, I also have my other podcast now, so it's going to be very hard to maintain consistency with that. I'm not even going to try to promise that I will, because that's going to be very hard. And I think even if I do produce episodes, they're probably going to be more shorter episodes like this one, because I still like to have this here. And the whole reason you guys know that I started this podcast was to have a bit of a journal for myself and to be able to keep track of where I was in my business. And I think this is a very pivotal time for me in my business, and that I'll look back on in a couple of years and say, well, I'm glad I pushed through that time. It got hard. It got hard there financially to be able to stay in business, but we did what we had to do to be able to get through it. And I'll look back on this and be very thankful, I think, for this position that I was in, that hopefully then is going to set me up for my business to be in a stronger position later on. And I think I'll be very glad at that. And I'll be glad that I have this memory and have this sort of audio journal of me being able to do this. So I still want to be able to continue to make these episodes, just not sure what format we're going to be continuing them in. But there will be something more to come in the future, but I can't promise that they will be as regular as normal. And so I just want to leave this episode with that little thought of don't be scared of taking a few steps back, because whilst it may be a few steps back in your mind and in some certain realities, it may be a few steps forward in others, because you may be making the right decision even though it seems like the wrong decision at the time. It seems like a stupid decision. You're probably caring too much about what other people have to say or what other people may be thinking of you, when really the ego may have to take a bit of a hit in order to do what's best for you and your business and best for you on this creative journey moving forward. So I want that to be the message for everyone. I don't want people to be scared of doing some things because anyone else may have something to say, when it probably is the right thing to do for you. And with that, guys, I really hope you did enjoy this episode. I hope you learned a little bit from it. I'm sorry that I've been a bit irregular over the past couple of weeks, but I wanted to give this little bit of a life update. And if you have been enjoying the episodes, if you've been listening to any of the older episodes of this podcast, I would love to hear from you guys on Instagram @_Mike Jeffrey. I'll leave a link to that in the description of this podcast, wherever you're listening to it. And until the next episode, guys, I hope you have a great week or a great few weeks, however long it is. And I will speak to you again soon. Bye.